So somebody asked me to do a live stream. So I thought, you know what? I weren't doing nothing else. I thought, go on then, we'll do it and we'll see what happens. I've never done this before. So hopefully we can set up some chat. So if you guys want to ask any questions or whatever, we can do that. But let's just see how this goes and how many people want to join us. I think the chat's on. Let me just check. Like I said, I've never done this before. Hi, Andy. How you doing? God bless you, sir, as well. So we've got chat. And we've got 17 people, which is a shock. So if you've got any questions, and, you know, now's the time to ask them. Hi, Gemma. Hi, Karen. Rain, Dove from Canada. So I don't know how many of you saw the video that I just put up about the capital system. And what my thinking was, and I've been, you know, thinking about this pretty much all week, is that this is bigger than what we think. Clearly, you know, the same problems are in every country. And first of all, I know we've got problems with what's taking place with our Earth, with the geomagnetics. I know a lot of people like to talk about that. But we've got short-term problems which are, if not equally important to us. I mean, there's nothing worse than the cost of living at the moment for a lot of people. And it's going to get worse. It's going to get a lot worse because technology is going to be, you know, taking more jobs inevitably off us. And what my problem is here is, what are we supposed to do? What are we supposed to do to participate in this capital system that's broken right now? How we, you know, because there is, like I've mentioned before, only 3 ways you can participate in this system, and that is work or exchange your labour for money, or, you know, you can claim benefits, which really isn't an option for a lot of people because the benefits are just not enough to live on, or you steal it and you risk going to prison for that. And a lot of us are too honest to do that in any case. But those are the 3 main ways in which we can earn money. Yes, Buster, it was you actually that I thought, okay, I saw your comments in the video. I thought, I'll go live. Why not? Not doing nothing this evening. So what's the latest with the sun and what can we expect in the next 6 to 18 months? I used to do a lot of reports on the sun. I did predict within 24 hours, even X-flares that was happening. It was that predictable at one point, but I don't really, all I do now, I go probably like a lot of you guys, I go onto Solar Ham, and that's really for the Earth Alpha at a glance. That's just to get the data with regards to, you know, whether we've got a solar storm or whether there's X-rays we're experiencing, or, you know, basically how many sunspots there are. I mean, the whole business, I mean, I've not really kept in my involvement with the sun for a long time, and that's because of the way they count the sunspots. Basically, what I didn't like about it is they allow, if there's a prominent sunspot on the disk, they will allow it to go all the way around and back again. They'll renumber that when it's the same sunspot. And I think that that's misleading. I don't think that's the way you should count sunspots, you know, by giving them another number, you know, and saying that it's a different sunspot just because it's been round once, you know. And that's why, you know, I think that there's been a bit of fiddling with the numbers of sunspots for a long period of time. And like I say, we used to talk about solar data a lot. I'm blind, so I have to keep putting my glasses on to read what's in the you made me happy, mate. Been following you for ages. We'll just see how it goes in this live stream. I don't expect a great amount of people because I didn't, you know, schedule it as a live update, but we'll see. I know some people can make donations on this, but I would advise that you don't, because all that's going to happen is YouTube's going to get 40% of that donation that you make through doing, you know, the top chats that people do. And I don't want to give them anything. I don't want to give them nothing. because they've not been fair to me over these years. I don't know whether you've been following me, but we used to have monetization, and then all of a sudden it stopped. And I guess it's because of the controversial topics that I talk about on this channel. And I don't know if you've noticed the throttling back of views that we've been getting. I mean, I'm lucky if I get 1,000 views now on one video, regardless of what I put on there. But I've always tried to keep it honest, the channel. There's been a lot of videos I would have liked to have talked about. And it just seems like it's getting swamped now with everyone on YouTube, everyone that, you know, has got a topic to talk about, you know, that's what's happening. And I've noticed a lot of people are copying TikTok videos and bringing them over to YouTube as well. So, yeah, we're living in really strange times. It's not just, like I say, the geomagnetics, which is primarily what we talk about a lot on this channel. And I know a lot of you guys have been following me for, you know, quite some time. We've been talking about that for over a decade now. Can you believe that? We've been monitoring it for a good 6 years with our own equipment here. And one of the days when we do a live broadcast like this, you know, I'll show you some of the equipment that we've got. And, you know, I'll see if I can get the computer up in the loft so you can have a look at the Trimax system, because people still believe that we haven't got no equipment. And they say, well, you're not really. Another thing I get a lot, and people ask me is, it's not real observatory. Well, of course it's a real observatory. It's just that the equipment is based at in my apartment here. And the reason for that is I'd never be able to afford to, you know, buy separate premises. And we certainly don't raise enough money to enable that to happen. But what's the difference? I mean, we live in a very clean environment around here. We're on the verge of open countryside. Well, we are on. If I just turn the computer around, that's open countryside for as far as you can see. So it's clean. It's a cul-de-sac, so there's not a lot of traffic. There's not a lot of heavy goods vehicles coming up and down the road, which would affect the magnetometers. So, you know, that's why I run it from the house. It's kept it affordable. Yeah, someone's roughly he's talking about, does anyone remember when the sun was yellow? Yeah, I hear that a lot. Some people say it's white now, and I don't know, is the honest answer. One thing I will mention about the sun is our orbit around the sun, and I've talked about this before. I don't think enough people talk about the Milankovitch cycle. So the Milankovitch cycle, for those that don't know, is a 100,000-year cycle. And let's say we get to about 85,000 years of that 100,000-year cycle, the orbit of our planet changes into an elliptical orbit as opposed to a spherical orbit. And when it does that, we go into glacial periods. And you know, with all this climate change and everything that's going on at the moment, people saying, well, the glaciers are melting. Well, to me, that should be what should be expected, given the point in time at which we're in, the Milankovitch cycle right now, because we've just come out of an interglacial. Some suggest that we could be 6,000 years going back into a glacial period. And, you know, in that time, because we spend 85,000 years in the glacial period, and, you know, at that point in time, the glaciers naturally will rebound. But in an interglacial, it shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone that they do melt, you know, during an interglacial like we've just experienced. But we're going to start to see them rebound at some point. NASA know about this, but it's not commonly broadcast in mainstream media for some reason. I don't know why that is the case, but, you know, it is the way it is. And, you know, as far as I'm concerned, anyhow, this whole business of man-made global warming through burning, you know, fossil fuels is just nonsense. If you look at the natural reservoirs of carbon and the degassing of oceans and degassing of land, CO2, you'll find that that makes up 99.5% of the CO2 that's naturally reoccurring. What they're trying to say is that 0.5%, or not even that amount, when you look into it, they're saying that that is the bit that's tipped it over the scale. Can you believe? And of course, it's humans that get blamed for that, which is ridiculous. But it was only, in my view, this has been a recent fashion for the last 25 years. You know, they've been talking about CO2 causing global warming and sending us over that 0.5% or whatever it is that puts us in a, you know, a warming period. It was just to raise money, and they relied on the lack of information that the general public had. And, you know, it was a good excuse for them to earn, like we've seen the United Nations expecting to raise 1 trillion a year for, you know, these green policies, you know, building more wind turbines, building more solar panels and solar fields and things like that. Just have a quick read of what's going on in the yeah, talking about the auroras. Yeah, we shouldn't be getting them at this latitude. Another thing that you've probably noticed, that around about in the summer, around about 5 or 6 o'clock here in the UK, and you might be noticing in other parts of the world, sundogs and more serious clouds. These are the clouds that look like little feathers in the sky. Well, those are ice crystals. It could be another sign that we are we're returning back into the throes of a glacial period. And certainly seeing sundogs at the position of where we are. I mean, I'm based around about 52 degrees north. We're getting, these have become more common over the last 7 years, say. Sundogs, these are like little rainbow balls either side of the sun. And sometimes on some occasions you get it above it. But this is an anomaly which is more seen in the Arctic regions, not at this sort of latitude. So, you know, it's something that, again, the mainstream media doesn't really talk about. But these people are starting to notice these things. You know, we are going through some dramatic changes. And, you know, the media they're only talking about the propaganda that your government wants you to know about, nothing else. But that seems to be the way the world is these days. And I was watching a video on YouTube, or it might have been on the news. They're bringing out more online laws now. So, for instance, YouTube, anyone that gives any information now, they've got to have credentials to do it, apparently, or you might lose that video, or you might even lose the whole channel. Especially if you're giving financial advice. I think that's, but you know what it's like. They use these things, they say they're using them for a specific purpose, but then they just blanket use them for anyone they want to get rid of. I'm surprised that we've still managed to keep a YouTube channel, because it's obvious what they do to me now. You know, they just, you know, they throttle back the views, and you hear people saying that, oh, well, you know, I know some people might say, well, it's not that you're being throttled back, it's just that you're crap and no one wants to watch you. But it is genuinely YouTube throttling back the views, not making announcements, not notifying people that there's been a video done. And you hear Gerald Celente talk about this. You hear recently Canadian Prepper talking about this, you know. So it's actually happening. They are doing it. And what gets me is they say that we live in democracy over here in the West and in Europe. We've got democracy, but look what they're doing. You know, they are definitely silencing people talking about specific topics. Now, I don't know why they would want to silence someone that mainly talks about geomagnetics like we do. I really don't know why. I mean, it's not like even if they made, I mean, NASA do occasionally talk about it. So what's the big deal? Is it maybe, it probably is, isn't it? It's probably some of the other controversial things that I talk about that they don't like. Like today, I guarantee they won't like anyone talking about the fact that the capital system's collapsed. But what was surprising to me is when I asked artificial intelligence, what happens during an economic collapse. That was what it gave me, what was in the last video I done. So, you can spot all the things that it was talking about happening all around us. So, it's a real problem, and I think that the more people that realise that the capital system has broken, then there's going to be more. There's going to be trouble on the streets. That's the plain way to say it. The simplest way to say it. When people lose everything, they lose it completely. They lose their head, and they are going to take to the streets. Here in the UK, I mean, you've seen it yourselves, haven't you? And it's not just here in the UK. When they start putting alarm tags on blocks of cheese, things are bad. It's not just that they put it on now coffee, they put it on packs of bacon, and people are just shoplifting left, right, and centre because they can't afford to, buy the food. Local authorities here in the UK have taken over a lot of the food banks, and rather than give people benefits at an adequate amount to purchase food, what they do now is give you a ticket to go and get food from the food bank. So the local authorities aren't giving money, they're giving tickets out for food. I think it's sad. I've seen something really sad today on YouTube. A British couple had gone to a charity. They're homeless. They were in their mid to late 40s, sorry. No, yeah, they were getting on close to 40, maybe around that age. And the charity gave them a tent, and they'd managed to find somewhere an old derelict house in the back garden, and managed to get access to the back garden. And they'd pitched this tent up, and it was like they'd been given a house. It was sad to see, but they were so grateful for it. And they were showing the guy that was doing the documentary on them and other homeless people. I think it was in Bournemouth, this town. And it was like, they were showing him where they sleep, and they said, this is better than the tent that they had before, because when they used to sleep in the other tent, it was that small that they'd touch the sides, and if it rained, the water would come through. It's just, we shouldn't be seeing this in any Western country. We're supposed to be here in the UK. Is it the 6th or 7th richest country in the world? And yet we're seeing that. It's sad. And somebody else suggested that, we live in, in London. If you're in London now, there's 40% of the social housing is for refugees. What's going on? How come, the people that are nationals can't get access to, social housing, and why are they classed as priority? I always say this, I'm not going to go on about refugees too much, because I know these are topics that we'll get together and talk about. But just briefly, why have they got to come through 7 countries and still make their way to the UK and not make an asylum claim in any of those countries? Why do they only make the asylum claim in this country? Why are they coming to this country to do it? And how come they've passed through several other countries on their journey to the UK and not made a single asylum claim? You know what I would do, and I think I suggested this in one of the videos. I would say you're going to be put back on the boat, and you're going to be sent back if you do not make a claim for asylum before you get here. So that way you can give the genuine cases asylum, people that really need it, and help them. And then all the others, because I think what a lot of people are upset about in this country is not just the fact that, millions come in every year. It's that they are economic migrants. They're coming here to work, or they're coming here to claim benefits and do a little side job. We're not stupid, but this is a problem in a lot of countries now. So let's just have a look what you guys are talking about in the comments. Yeah. There've been, with regards, Karen's asking there about the spraying of the skies. Yeah, this is, China. incidentally, they don't hide the fact that they spray in the clouds, to make it rain, or they can dry up the clouds to stop it raining. They don't hide the fact that they do it. This is something that's been going on for years and years. Cloud seeding. Another topic I see come up in the comment section a lot is about HAARP, and I think people give HAARP too much credit. Our weather and our natural weather system is a huge inertia. To change it on a major scale would require, not just HAARP as big as it is, and it is a bigger an array, antenna array. It would require that on a probably scale of tens of thousands more to make it that effective. That that they could say, this is proper weather modification on continent size. So I think a lot of the time it's given way too much credit. But cloud seeding, a lot of countries do it now. You can pay a company in America; they'll do it for you. If you need rain or precipitation on, say, 10,000 acres of your farm, you can pay for that to be done. Yeah, good to have you from Ireland joining us, Brookside, and all you guys. It's nice that we've got 44 people here in the room, so it's good. I didn't expect that many, but I thought a few of you might jump at the chance to ask a few questions. Where do you want to go with the conversation next? Any questions? How's the Thai wife? Okay, first of all, okay, let's answer that question. First of all, I was never married to a Thai wife, right? I did briefly go out with a Thai woman, but she weren't from Thailand. I went back to Thailand with her. I'm one of these unusual guys. Most guys bring Thai women back. I took one to Thailand with me. No, I'd dated a Thai girl for a year. So there you go. I hope that answers your question. But I'm no longer with her. But she was British. She did originate from Thailand, but she moved there. She's got a British passport now. She lives in Maidenhead. So, but it was a lot, commuting for me to drive down to London every weekend to see her. It fizzled out in the end. But it was an experience going to Thailand, I will say that. I didn't, like most people that go to Thailand, I didn't spend long in Bangkok. I spent 2 days when I arrived and a day when we came back. But we was right north by the Laos border. So you could say that I saw the real Thailand and how the real Thai people live. And they're really, even though they don't have a lot, I mean, this little village where we stayed in like a bed and breakfast sort of thing, the people that run it were absolutely amazing. She owned her own restaurant, but she'd ask me every day if I wanted food brought back, or she'd go to the restaurant and go and cook it herself and bring it to me. It was amazing. The people in Thailand are really happy-go-lucky people, and don't go to place if you're ever going to visit Thailand. Yeah, Pattaya and all the tourist places are nice, but if you want to meet real Thai people, go out to. I mean, we flew to Khon Kaen, then we spent another 3 hours driving right up, like I say, to the north border, and we was by Nakar Mountains, or 15 minutes away from there. And we just spent it with the family over there because there was the water festival on while we was there. So, we was there for Sukran. So it was nice. It was nice to understand a bit, another culture. So yeah, no, but I was never married to one. Tartaria. Raffles, what's that? Tartaria stuff that's all over YouTube. Chippy, the magnetic pole is still migrating. I do put it all onto Patreon now. Don't really talk about the actual position, but if you saw the Earth Alpha at a glance, you would have got on the Earth Alpha glance, you would have got the longitude and latitude of the latest position that we did the other day on the 4th. It's slightly increased in speed, only very slightly. But it's a shame. It really is, because we have had over the last year and a half a lot of strange activity. Like, you know, the pole did stop migrating for a little while. Then it backtracked a little bit, which is the first time I've ever known it do that. And then it went forward and then stopped again, if you remember, and then it carried on. But why NASA and NOAA and the European Space Agency don't anymore give you the weekly GPS or the monthly GPS of the position of the magnetic North Pole like they used to is beyond me. But I had someone that claimed that worked for the department that collects the data from the swarm missions, and they said that they are only allowed to collect the data, but they're not allowed to analyze it. That then goes outsourced, and it gets, you know, dealt with there. But I do know that the European Space Agency's mission, Swarm, was part funded by the military. And I don't know how true this is, but they use now in fighter jets magnetic mapping. So that's probably the military aspect of Swarm mission. And it could also be why they classify a lot of their information on that. If fighter jets are using magnetic maps to get a little bit lower on the ground to fly, you know, that could be the reason why, you know, they don't broadcast it. But if you look at NOAA, from 2015, they only forecast, I think, up to 2020, the position based on the speed that it was moving at that point in time. So you won't get a lot of information now from these organisations on this, yet you would be expecting to get more and more from it. You'd expect this topic to be in the mainstream media. We don't know how many people are being affected by the weakened magnetosphere right now. We don't know whether the cancer rates have increased as a result of the inbound radiation that we're getting more of because of a weakened magnetosphere. And we don't know how many people are dying due to the magnetic pole related to cardiac arrhythmia failure, you know, altering the rhythmic pace of your heart. We don't know these questions. So, okay. Tartaria is the old world, pre-1800s, got you. Yeah. So, yeah, the poles are still migrating. Slightly, this month was slightly faster than the previous month. Another thing that I was watching a video on, I won't mention who it was, but they was talking about that they'd heard from some volcanologists about an increase in volcanic activity. You know, if you go onto poleshift news.com, you know, on the Earth Alpha at a glance, you'll see that we record every month or so the amount of active volcanoes in eruption, not the ones that are showing signs of eruption, just the ones in eruption. And it's just slightly over 1 or 2 more than what it has been, but on average, it's not really anything to talk about or get excited about. It's like, you know, some people say, oh, the frequency of earthquakes are on the increase and the magnitude is getting bigger and bigger, but when you look at it, it's not. And the beauty of Earth Alpha at a glance, the reason why I archived it like I did, is that you can go back 6 years, and if you're interested in volcanic activity, you know, you can just, you know, like I've done and I've showed people before, you know, you put all those data sets from going back 6 years, if you want to, you put them all in Excel, and you can produce a chart, and it will show you the average and whether it's spiking recently in recent days or whether it's declining. And you could do that with the CO2, the oxygen, the muons. So you can do a little bit of investigative work yourselves. But the reason for putting it on the website was so that for that very reason, if you hear somebody talking about earthquakes and the magnitude and frequency increasing, you can check for yourselves. If someone says like, oh, volcanologists are talking about volcanoes erupting more now than they ever have done, and this is going to be, a trend and it's going to continue, well, you can go straight onto the website and see it for yourselves. You'll see whether it's increasing or decreasing. That's why I did it like that. So I have to keep putting, even though I've got, believe it or not, I've got contact lenses and I still have to wear my glasses to read. So I'm just reading what Carol's saying about the position of the volcano and the point you were closely watching. Well, I'm not aware of the volcano you're on about, but we are still moving easterly towards Russia. The magnetic pole we know where it's going to end up. It's going to end up right in the highest intensity over Russia. And I've showed a video of the decay of Canada's intensity. At the same time, we see the increase of Russia's intensity, and it's heading for straight the epicenter of the plumes that we show on the swarm image. It's heading for the center of that. At the moment, it's heading for that epicenter of that high intensity region. Where your magnetic North Pole is pointing right now, this, if you haven't heard me talk about this before, is not where the pole should be. It's stuck in between two high intensities, one over Canada region, one over Russia. And you can do this. I've done this experiment before where I've got two magnets and I've brought the compass in between the two of them. And where does the compass point? It points exactly in the middle. Now, if I move one of the magnets further away, then the compass needle will go over towards, the one that's closest to it. If I bring it back in, it moves back into the center. So where our compass is pointing right now is not where the intensity is. If Canada lost its intensity right now, that needle would flick straight over to Russia. So we've got over the northern hemisphere two high intensities. You could say that if it weren't for the fighting of the two, the compass would be pointing at one of them or the other. You could say we've got two magnetic poles over the northern hemisphere, two over the southern hemisphere, but because the compass is in between two intensities, that's why your compass is pointing in the middle. So, I mean, people, and the other thing is as well, which is not commonly explained, is that, the actual magnetic North Pole, what we're tracking, is actually real South Pole. It's a South Pole intensity, not a North Pole intensity. I believe it does, James. I believe that the magnetic poles are affecting the weather on our planet, and I've showed before the W3 on Null Skull when we've pulled up the, we look at the temperature on the W3 chart, and then we compare it with Swarm's magnetic intensity. I don't think there's any coincidence at all, and I can show you this at another time. Perhaps when I learn to do live better, I'll be able to drag it in so you can see what we're talking about. But if you look at the temperature on the W3 chart and then compare it on the W3 chart of Swarm image where the intensities are, guess what? The sub-zero temperatures on our planet plume exactly like they do on the magnetic intensity chart. So where the coldest temperatures are absolutely over the regions where the highest intensity magnetism is. So I believe that it does. And what is more not of a coincidence is not, I don't believe by any chance, a coincidence, because if you look at the two intensities of magnetic high intensity, one over Canada, one over Russia, you've got in between there a low intensity. Well, on the temperature chart, you've got a warmer gap in between the two low temperature regions. So if you overlay them both over top of each other, it seems like there's a pattern here. And I don't believe that our Earth would create that pattern by any other means other than that there is a relationship to it. Although I've never heard any other scientific organisation either theoretically mention it or make it as a fact, make a statement over it. So, I do believe that the temperature in these regions is by no coincidence. Yes, no problem. If there's anything that you want to ask me, you might as well, grab yourself a coffee. We'll see how long it is before everyone gets too bored of listening to me. And, I don't mind talking about anything you want to talk about, really. Does anyone else have any questions? What we got? Hi, Antoinette. Do I have any idea why the poles started to migrate in the first place? Well, we're around about 125 years ago where they started to begin to migrate again. You've probably heard me talk about the last time they went through a completed reversal was 780,000 years ago. But prior to that, according to the magnetic record, that is the historical record of reversals, which is taken from seafloor spreading. So if you look at Google Earth, it actually shows you in the mid-Atlantic, like a crack all the way down the Earth. Well, that is active in some regions more than others, and we get lava pushing away. And as the lava pushes away on both sides, the magnetite solidifies, and it gives us like a north-south strike pattern, which we can judge by the speed of the lava flow over periods of time. Gives us an idea as to when they erupted in our history. I don't think you'd get it accurately down to a year, but you might get it down to maybe a century or a decade, maybe. But why do they migrate? Why do they do that? Why did we get magnetic pole reversals in the first place? I don't know. I really don't know. Good question. But on average, they used to migrate they used to go through a reversal every 300,000 years. What concerns me this time is that it's taken an extra 500,000 years to go through what could be, and we don't know yet, a completed reversal. We are 500 or 500,000 years overdue a reversal. And, I ask the question, why is that? Something slowing down in our core of our Earth? I've talked about this before. Mars had a magnetosphere, which it no longer has. It also had possibly an atmosphere. It did have an atmosphere, and we know for a fact it had water on its surface, and it's gone. Was that because the magnetosphere collapsed on the planet? We know that the core has probably slowed down to the point where it's been millions of years now since there was an active volcano on Mars. So all these things that we could look for on our planet, like if we started to see a big reduction in volcanic activity and possibly plate tectonic movements, if that started to slow down, we could suggest that could be suggesting that there is something slowing down in our core. But I would expect before we started to notice tectonics and volcanic activity declining, I would expect we would see the magnetosphere reduce in strength and even completely collapse. Which is one of what I know I shouldn't get excited about it, but it's one of the things that keeps me passionate about this topic, because if we look at our neighboring planet, this already happened You know, we've got evidence of what happens when a magnetosphere collapses on a planet. It ends up looking like Mars. And we don't know. We know it had water on its surface. We know that because if we look at the terrain, you can see all these wavy lines like veins. Well, those are erosion riverbeds. They're riverbeds that had water flowing on them. And what carved those veins, or the on that terraform, was the movement of water. So, you know, maybe, I mean, we haven't found it yet, but we're looking still for even microscopic life on that planet. The reason why it's important to note that there was water on there, because it's water that was one of the key factors that life formed on our planet. If we never had water on this planet, there would be, if any, no biodiversity. I know that there are, on these deep ocean vents, there are chemoautotrophs, which are single-cellular like bacteria that thrive down there by the black smokers that you get at the bottom of the oceans, the deepest parts, where hardly any sunlight reaches them, but they've learnt to adapt to the the heat of the volcano and the lava and these black smokers, and they thrive there. So, you know, it just shows us that life can exist on other planets in extreme conditions. I mean, we also, I think it thrives on like sulfurous platforms near active volcanoes on the surface as well. There's bacteria that live on there. But, you know, that's what, other scientists that are working for NASA, that's what they're looking for, even the simplest forms of life. Okay, so yeah, another one that we get a lot of in the comment section is it's either called Planet X, or it's called Nibiru, or there's Katrina, is it? Another one? Not 100% sure. But, you know, I like to talk about these things because, I mean, it's not a club, but it's a couple of people that are interested now come round, and I've got quite a lot of work probably. I don't talk about it a lot. Probably don't talk about it as much as I should do. But I've been doing for like 25 years a lot of research, which is about interesting things like our very first civilizations, like the Sumerians. And I'll tell you, getting on, I know we've diverted off the topic of, you know, is there a 10th planet? All I'm going to say about that, just to answer that question, is if there was, there are enough semi-professional, amateur astronomers to have spotted it. Now, I know what people will say in an argument for that, because I get a lot of this with flat earthers as well. They would say that it's not within sight or vision of our of being detected by, you know, amateur astronomers, but, you know, it would be. And, you know, I would assume that it would have to be within our solar system for it to affect things like gravity on our planet or affect our sun. It would, but getting back to the Sumerians, the reason why I mentioned them is because what shocked archaeologists is what was actually in these clay tablets. You might have come across it yourselves. And, you know, this is a great topic to talk on for a little bit, if you guys don't mind. What they found in their tablets was recorded information about what their beliefs was. And they were saying in these tablets that they were, their gods were the Anunnaki, which descended from the heavens. You know, we have in some other religions as well, which they're not clearly saying it, but they're, you know, you've got to imagine how they would look at it from their less technological advanced society like what we've got now, but how they would interpret what they were seeing and how they would describe it in the way that they did. I think if we was back in their days, we'd probably be describing it themselves. Some of the things that we talk about in this little group occasionally are, you know, Bible things, because the Bible does mention If you look in Revelations, it talks about the bride descending from the heavens. This is an object that's measured by 144 cubits. So you've got the Bible talking about things that descend from the heavens. Ezekiel in the Bible talks about the object that descends as he's sleeping, I think, next to the river Euphrates, if I remember the story correctly. He's talking about an object that he describes as wheels within wheels, and this thing descended. You've got the cherubims in the Bible, that have 4 faces: a human, a bird, and I think a lion, and something else. But this is all very interesting. And then you've got the crop circles. And I believe that there are real crop circles. I'll tell you this straight now. Me and my father saw something in the back garden one day. And this, what we saw was something around about 1 meter inside. It was sphere in shape, and it was the colour of a pearl, like we have on your necklaces. It was the same colour as that. And it wasn't far away from us. It was about 10 foot away, really close. And it came from around the tree. So it was obviously intelligently moving. It came from around the tree, slowly come in front of both of us, and then adjusted its altitude and went over the house, and we didn't see it again. But immediately after seeing that, I turned around to my dad. I said, "Did you just see what I saw then?" He said, "What, that ball?" I went, "Yeah." And then we said, "Well, what the hell? We just saw it." But I've seen videos on YouTube. One of them is Concorde, and as it's flying, it's been, obviously there's another plane there videoing it, and there's a ball flying around the outer parts of the plane while it's flying in the air, and this ball comes past the door, and therefore I'm thinking to myself, it's the exact same size, or they're about the same size as the ball that me and my father saw. And then I saw the same spheres fly over. How real these are, I saw these spheres flying over crop circles, laying the crop circle down as it's flying round, and then it goes. So, it's an interesting topic. Let's have a look what you guys are talking about. So, to answer Carol's question, is there another planet affecting our sun? I don't think so. No. It wouldn't just, if it had the mass to affect our sun, it would also have, before that, I believe, it would have the mass to affect most planets in our solar system. So I don't think that there is another planet affecting our sun. Not saying that there might. I mean, I don't. As far as I'm aware, anyhow, that's my opinion. Let's talk about another one that we get commonly in the comment section, which is flat Earth. I don't know what your opinions are on flat Earth, but it's strange, isn't it? That, I mean, even this was something that went through Christopher Columbus's mind. He wanted to find out if he was going to fall off the edge of the Earth if he sailed across the Atlantic Ocean. And he was the one who found the mines, wasn't he? What I find strange about the story of Christopher Columbus is that if you go to Egypt, you've got pyramid builders, been doing it for a long time. And then over the Atlantic, guess what? Another civilization is building, the Mayans, pyramids. And yet Christopher Columbus was the one to have discovered the South Americas. So I think somebody had already done it, because I don't think it's coincidence that these two civilizations, separated by the Atlantic Ocean, for some reason are building the same structures at around about the same time. I don't know. What's your thoughts on that? I haven't come across that story about the oarfish surfacing and dying. Maybe it's something we should look into, but there could be a lot of reasons for it. Could be a lot of reasons for it. I know that some of the groundings of big whales is probably it could be to do with the thermal currents changing, but it could also be to do with the magnetic intensity weakening. You know, we just don't know. These are migratory species, aren't they? That I think that they rely on the magnetite in their brain, small amounts, which gives them their ability to navigate and migrate seasonally. So it could be it could be part of the course as to why we're seeing beachings of a lot of animals in one go. Well, I've certainly never heard that they're rumoured doomsday. It's an omen. Could be. I mean, we don't know a lot of the stuff that our ancestors. I mean, we've lost a lot of information. I mean, I was concerned back in 2012 because of the Mayans, that tablet. But what was broke off it, we don't know. It just said the date, didn't it? And then there was a piece broken off, which probably was what they was talking about. But what I do find, listen to this, guys. Tell me if you find this more than a coincidence. You got the Mayan calendar, which has 144 bakton, is it, in it? But that number is mentioned in the Bible a couple of times as well. Again, on two different sides of the Atlantic. And there's more than a coincidence. This is all the stuff that I usually talk about in this little group. The Mayans, we talk about the Nazca Plains. You probably saw those, but what really, it's not so much of the images that can only be seen from the sky, so you'd have to have an aircraft to see the images, because you can't make them out if you're on the ground very clearly. But what really puzzles my mind about Nazca is that mountain that looks like somebody come along with a knife and sliced it off flat. Because mountains are jagged, aren't they, at the top? I've never seen a mountain like it before. It looks like somebody's literally sliced it off. And I think there's a video on YouTube called Chariots of the Gods, which show you the Nazca lines. They also talk about this particular mountain there. But I did watch a documentary of someone went back there. I can't remember the guy's name now. He's a very popular guy. He's done a lot of work on ancient cultures and beliefs and things like that. But they said they took an engineer there, and he says it'd be virtually impossible for him to do it. Just as much as what the Egyptians was doing, trying to lift out the ground those 1,000-ton obelisks in one piece. And yet these archaeologists are trying to tell us, and the historians are saying they smashed it with a rock. They was using boulders to shape it. Well, what was they using to lift it out of the ground? That particular one cracked, didn't it? The one that you've probably seen yourselves. It cracked, and therefore they abandoned bringing it out of the quarry. But I was a little bit disappointed. I went to Egypt a few years ago now, and I was a little bit disappointed when I saw the pyramids with my own eyes, because I saw some of them blocks and I thought, you know what? With an amount of people, you could easily move them blocks. They're not that big. The blocks are not as big as I thought they would be. Perhaps the ones in the King's Chamber are bigger. The granite blocks there. Okay, that would take a bit of work. When you look at the pyramids, they're not that big when you're up against them. But what I really wanted to see when I went to Egypt, but I didn't get around to it, we went to Luxor. We saw I can't remember her name now. She was a real popular queen at the time. She lived on the other side of the Nile. But then we went to Cairo. We went to the Valley of the Kings, which was interesting, But there's the thing as well. I've done a lot of research personally on the Great Pyramid. There's a lot going on there. Not only have they followed star constellations, but if you overlay, if you and there's a lot of artifacts that Carlos Donner, I don't know if any of you have heard of that guy. He does special curations, so he collects pieces from lots of museums and puts all these unusual artifacts together. Well, this particular set of artifacts, I think he said, was about 17,000 years old. They give him the fact that the pyramid is supposed to be about 4,500 years old. You know, that puts it in perspective. But my point between the two of these things, if you look at this plaque, there's two people made out of stone looking up at the sky, and then on the plaque on the floor where they're standing, there's the Winter Triangle. It's absolutely blatant. It's the Winter Triangle, which is the constellation in the sky that's made up of the three stars: Betelgeuse, Procyon, and Sirius. Very important stars in the Egyptian, writings. But you also see at the side of the Winter Triangle the star constellation Orion, and that is exactly what the Egyptians built the pyramids in the constellation of. Two pyramids aligned perfectly, and then you've got the one slightly offset. If you look at the Orion star constellation, you see the exact same thing. But then if you look slightly to the left in the sky, you see the Winter Triangle as well. So I don't think it was any coincidence that they built the pyramids in the shape that they did, and they also built it in the constellation of Orion. But there's a lot more to it than that, guys. There is a really lot more to it. Maybe one day I'll get the star chart out and I'll show you. I've done a video on this before, where if you have a look at a diagram of the interior of the pyramid, you'll see that the king's chamber is slightly offset from the queen's chamber, and they look like arrows. So if you put that Winter Triangle on the star chart, and then you put a dot where the king's chamber is and the queen's chamber, guess what? Those two dots align in the galactic center of the spiral arm of our galaxy. Now, all these things are by no coincidence. They knew what they was doing, the Egyptians did. And some people say they had technology that we don't know about. I've heard some people say, well, they've looked at some of the remaining stoneworks there, and not that they've come across 90-degree drilling. So the drill's gone in straight and then it's turned 90 degrees. So they're directional drilling. How true that is, I don't know. But I find all that stuff really interesting. It's like a little passion of mine, all that stuff. Stonehenge, Jim, I got kicked out of Stonehenge. We spent 3 hours driving down to Stonehenge, and there's this little rope. I don't know if you've ever been there. Well, I stepped over the rope and I walked up to the pyramid. On the way getting to not the pyramid, the stone structures, on the way there, security guards were just coming from everywhere. So they said, you're unallowed, because I actually got up. I actually walked into the centre of the stones, and they said, you've got to leave. So we was there 15 minutes and we got kicked out by the security at Stonehenge. But what annoys me about this is the Heritage Trust were given it. They were granted it by the family that owned the land that Stonehenge is on. And it's like I said to these security people, how dare you charge? I think we was charged like £18 each or something like that to see it. But, how dare they charge? They never built it. This thing is possibly 8,000 years old. And that's another thing as well. People say, I think some people get confused with pole reversal and actual axis tilt or reversal. But here's the thing, we've got these ancient megaliths like Stonehenge, which accurately on the summer solstice and on the winter solstice predict that day. They align with those days. So if there was an axis shift of the Earth, which I think Albert Einstein said was feasible, or a crustal slip, these things would no longer line up perfectly as they do. So if you was ever concerned, that we was going through an axis shift, then you could check it against Stonehenge. You could also check it against the Great Pyramid, because one of the faces lines up with north. And also then you could also check it with the Sphinx, because I believe that is in the east, facing the east, watching the sunrise, is it? or might be, yeah, I think it is facing the east, watching the sunrise. So these ancient things that you could use to check, see if we had actually had, like, you know, a slip of the crust, which made the axis change, you know, just putting it out there. I don't know whether it's the original stones. I did have a theory of how they managed to move them. And let's face it, some of those blue stones, I can't remember are they Saracens? Is that what they're called? But they may have slid them on ice. I believe that's one way they would have moved them. I don't know whether that's true or not. I mean, who knows how old they are? It's suggested 8,000 years old. It could be even a lot older than that. It could be from, you know, the last glacial period. Maybe that's how they moved them. But there are some other, I can't remember the other stone structures that we've got. But, you know, Stonehenge is a famous one, but there's another one not too far away from there. I can't remember what they're called. But there are also some in the Midlands as well, stone structures. So, you know, there's quite a few. I mean, there's stone structures in Africa in circles. There's a guy, I don't know whether he's actually an archaeologist. He might be, you know, a historian of some sorts, but, you know, he's talked about these. Is it, what's it called? Tibetli Tetli or something like that, I don't know. But, you know, they're another culture of great stoneworks. And they're all over the world. I just find the whole thing fascinating, you know, especially that, you know, the very first civilizations on our planet, or the first, you know, what they're called, civilized, you know, they had writings like the Sumerians. We're talking about UFOs. You know, I'm really interested in all that sort of stuff, because I don't believe for a minute that we're the only ones in the entire universe. Can't possibly be. But what I do sometimes when I think about these things, I do think how more technologically advanced are they than us? Because, I mean, what technology have we had that stems longer than 100 years ago that you can think of? Only in the last 50, 60 years, we've had TVs and phones. You know, can you imagine if we continue on this path of improving technology, where we'll be in 5,000 years? And then could you imagine if a civilization from another world had got 20,000 years of technology behind it? It would certainly have anti-gravity, it would certainly have a lot of other amazing technologies. I mean, just look at what we've got in the last 15 years. Now we're in an era of artificial intelligence. Look what Tesla's building with the robots. It's amazing. It's scary as well, because I've seen the Chinese robots that they've had lose control. And what you've got to remember is that these are like solid bits of metal flailing around at 100 miles an hour with their arms and legs. You wouldn't want to be in the vicinity of one if it malfunctioned. So, you know, I think there is a concern, because electronic things do break. I mean, our mobile phones don't last 5 years, do they, before we have to replace them? So... I've looked into ley lines before. You know, it's been a topic of interest. I think I've looked at a load of things. We was talking about flat Earth. Well, you know, there is a simple way of proving it, and I've done this years ago. I got some red-coloured dye, put it in the water, made the water go red, and then I dropped a few drops of oil. And what happens is, because there's obviously we live in gravity, it forms perfect circles. Have you ever noticed oil dropped into water forms a perfect circle where the pressure is equal on all sides? It forms a circle. Now, if I got a drop of water and squirted it out of a syringe into space, guess what shape would form? It would form a sphere. So, the natural shape in nature to form under zero gravity is spherical. And that's why, our sun is spheres, the earth is a sphere, the moon is a sphere. There's no flat planets. And I know that some people really take it to heart when you say, sorry, I can't accept that theory of a flat earth. But why should we? Even weather balloons can see the curvature of the earth. But then there are people out there that have been doing the flat earth for a long time, and they will not accept anything other. So it just surprises me that, even going back, hundreds of years, to the guy that sailed across the ocean, we, for some people, still haven't evolved from that mentality, thinking that the earth is still flat. Why would they think that when you can see that the two bodies that we see every day is the sun and the moon? Without telescopes, you would see all the other planets. They're all the same shape. But it's whatever what anyone wants. I have open mind about certain things. So if some people want to go down that road of flat Earth, then it's up to them, really. I think the answer's there for anyone that really knows the truth. I'm just reading some of your Tesla 369 again. I've done a lot of work on that. I actually built a coil. I don't know if has any of you heard of Marco Rodin? I've done a lot of work on I've watched a lot of research on Tesla. I think he was an amazing guy. I was a bit sad to hear that Elon Musk wasn't very keen on, he says if he had to choose between two people, it would be Henderson, not Tesla, because Henderson was able to bring it to market. Even though Tesla and Henderson had that war with one with DC, one with alternating current, and Tesla had the alternating current. And Henderson said, look, I'll show you how lousy alternating current is. I will give this horse, so many watts of DC, and we'll kill it instantly. And then we'll try another horse with alternating current. Can you believe that's how they thought their theories out in them days? But Tesla for me is a hero. I've always liked Tesla. Just look at what we've got as a result of that one man. And more interestingly, look at what he was trying to teach us about the 369, that you would understand the universe if you could understand what really lies behind them numbers. And there was the other thing as well. He said the only university that anyone needs to really pay attention to is the universe. And he claimed that most of his information was being sent to him via the universe. Well, I always say this. I do believe there's something else. Absolutely. And I don't know if you saw the universal equation that I've introduced to you guys before. I don't know. I'm going to light a cigarette up. I hope you don't mind. I'm going to make a coffee in a bit, but I'll come back if you want to carry on talking for a bit. We can talk about all these things. But I introduced the universal equation to you guys a few times. And we used to have someone in Arizona that would send us data from one of our magnetometers back. And his wife worked for NASA, and I think she worked on the mission of the rover that's on Mars at the moment. and she took the universal equation into NASA and showed a few people there, and their comment was, from what her husband told me, who was looking after the magnetometer, their comment was, we've never seen quite an equation reduce numbers so much as that, in a way that it does. And I don't mind showing you in another time, going through the universal equation, but it was where and how I got that equation. I'm not kidding you now. I've got no reason to lie about it or make up stories about it. And if you've ever heard me talk about it before, you'll know that I'm never changing this. The part of that explanation of where it came from, I don't know. I just know that one morning, about 10 odd years ago now, I woke up and it was like, sometimes you're dreaming, but when you wake up, you forget what the dream was. This time, it was like I was in my dream and I was saying, you've got to remember this in my dream. And when I woke up, I remembered it and I wrote it straight down. And then over the next few weeks, I realised that this was very important because, we was talking earlier about maybe there are species out there. They're gonna know about that equation themselves. They will definitely know about that equation. It's just basically whatever number you choose to write down. It can be 10 digits long, 20 digits long if you want to spend more time. You write it in reverse and you take the higher number away from the lower number, and then you add the numbers up individually, and then you get a number. And I guarantee that the number you get will be something like 7 and 2, which is 9, or it'll be 27, which you just separate the numbers again to 2 plus 7, you end up with 9. But if you do that repeatedly, you'll either have two numbers, and the only other way you get a different number other than 9 is if you start off with a number like 2002, because it doesn't matter which way. If you reverse it, you're going to end up with the same number. So you take that number away from the next number and you end up with 0. It's like taking 5 from 5, you end up with 0. So there's only two outcomes to this equation. It's a 9 and a 0. And to this day, the only other sequence of numbers that appears in 2s is binary, isn't it? 0s and 1s, on a CD-ROM. That's all 0s and 1s that make up the audio and the video that you see and hear. It's just a series of binary numbers. So it could be a binary system on another scale, I don't know. But the reason why I say that anyone from another world would have that, because they're going to have a number system, whatever. I mean, we've got different countries around the world that have different number systems. And we look at back in our ancient civilizations, they had symbols that represent numbers that we probably wouldn't recognize unless we was told what them symbols represent. So my thing is this: if we have an alien on another world with 5 fingers, he's going to have a symbol for that number 5. We're not going to recognize it unless we're taught it. But if they've got symbols for numbers, then they will definitely have that equation. At some point, they would have found that equation. So I think it's really important, that equation. I think there's more to it. That's like, that little bit of side research that I do, it will never be finished. Never, ever be finished. Because one thing just leads on to the next, to the next, to the next. But I was talking about Mark Roden, because, there's the flower of life pattern. Well, if you draw that hexagon shape, or is it a pentagon? I'm not sure. Off the top of my head, if you draw that shape around there, on the petals of each one, you can only fit the numbers 1 to 9. I'm going to have to get some stuff out one of the days and show you this stuff, because I've got, that much paperwork of all this stuff over about 25 years that we've looked at. And you can also fit the flower of life over a pyramid shape as well, which I did. And then you could, on the one face of the pyramid that you can fold the flower of life up into, you can only fit the numbers 1 to 9 on them. So I believe that this is an important number. And I was going to tell you about as well, the one place I didn't get to see, which the tourist guide was more than willing to take us to. It would have been a nightmare to get there, but it was the Temple of Osiris in Abydos, Egypt. Because there's the Osirian temple at the back, which is in ruins now. But guess what's on the wall? And I don't believe it was laser cut into the wall, but all over this one wall, which looks like it was in the basement of the building because it's ruins now. The Osiris temple's immaculate. It's one of the only temples with the roof still intact. So if ever you go to Egypt, you go and see that. But the flower of life is all over this one wall. So it was important to them. But more importantly, is if you count the amount of triangles in the border pattern around the outside, there's 144. Can you believe? That's a number that keeps coming up in different cultures around the world. The Mayans, the Egyptians, it's in our Bible. I think it really is an important number. And guess what? If you add 1 plus 4 plus 4, you get 9. So, and the other unique thing about that, the way I'd draw the numbers on the flower of life pattern, you can draw 9, but the 9 has to be in the top dead center. And then you've got 8 and 1, which if you add those two numbers up, that are opposite each other, they make 9. You've got 7 and 2 make 9, 5 and 4 make 9, 3 and 6 make 9, and they're all there in their opposed numbers. And what I tried to do, I'll show you one of the days. I've got loads of stuff to show you. We can do it in live videos, at another time. But I built electrical coils using the pattern that is in one of the circles of the flower of life. So the coil is actually a square coil. And I put different frequencies. I messed about a long time ago with signal generators and things like that. But I put a specific frequency. I can't remember what hertz it was, but it made the whole cube twitch like it was a heartbeat, believe it or not. It was actually shaking like it was beating a heart. So, I don't know how important frequency is. Our world can be looked at in two ways. It can be looked as a frequency or particles, so. Yeah, like I say, Revelations, Jim, talk about it. The 12 tribes of Israel is 12,000 in each tribe, making up the 144,000. And then there's the 144 cubits, which is also mentioned in Revelations as well. And that is the bride that descends, and that's the perimeter wall length. But there's lots and lots more. And that flower of life with the border pattern, which is what, I got from the image on that wall in the old Osiris in Abydos, Egypt, is probably older than the that temple at the back of Seti's temple, which is ruins now, with the flower of life pattern on, is probably older than the Great Pyramids. And the other thing is as well, no one was ever buried in that Great Pyramid. And if you look at the sarcophagus in there, it's way too small for a body. Maybe a child, a young child, maybe an 11-year-old would fit in it, but it was never meant to have anyone in there. All the kings were buried in the Valley of the Kings. That pyramid was not meant to have anyone in there. I don't know what was in there. Speculation. My wildest guess, maybe the Ark of the Covenant was put in that sarcophagus. I'm not, that's my theory. It could be, we don't know. But it's not. Whatever was in there, the lid's disappeared. The side of it's been cracked. So it was more like, somebody broke it, maybe opening it up, and whatever was in there is gone. And no one to this day and age has ever, said, we knew what was in there and we've got it. But let's face it, if it was the Ark of the Covenant, and from what I believe the Ark of the Covenant was, inside there was the tablets that Moses was given by God, the 10 Commandments on them tablets. Maybe they were in there. Maybe the Ark of the Covenant was in there. If you read, this is another thing, guys. If you read the Bible, there's some interesting things in there. Really, really interesting. It's like they're describing the Ark of the Covenant and how it's built, piece by piece, in very detailed. But they said also, I'm pretty sure, that whoever sits on the top of that box will be able to communicate with God himself. Is that correct? Am I reading the Bible correctly there? Anyone? I have read the Bible a few times. I'm not a religious nut job. I do find the stories from a scientific point of view very interesting. And you don't have to read too long in the Bible to find out that there's a knowledge of science. You know, and they're talking about the affirmatives at the beginning when God's creating the earth and he's separating is it affirmatives? So he's separating the waters from the skies. Well, when I saw that, I read that for the first time, I thought this is fluid dynamics being discussed there. That's what I got from it. But there's a lot of stuff in that Bible which, you know, I think about. Let's just put it that way. I find it very interesting. But, you know, I've looked at a lot of religions. I've read a lot of stuff on different religions. I just, out of curiosity, I wanted to know. Like I've looked into Buddhism. What I will say is that it's interesting that whoever is the subject of these religions, they all believe that at some point they're coming back. It's like, you know, the Christians believe that at some point Jesus is going to come back, you know. But everyone in these, all the religions that I've read, there is one book that I'm yet to read and I'm interested, but I'm on an English version. I have read the Quran, just out of curiosity. I wanted to read it. The one I haven't read a lot of, I've read a lot of Jehovah's Witness books. Somebody give me those. So I had a little read of those as well. But the one I haven't read is the Torah, the Jewish Torah. But I'd like a translated version of it. I suppose if I went out of my way, I'd find one. I've got lots of different religious books. So I just find the whole thing interesting. I'm just reading some of these things here in the comment section. You know, I wouldn't argue that Jesus wasn't the one, but I keep an open mind. I'm not a theologian. I am genuinely interested in religions and what is held in the religion, because a lot of it is historic information. And for that reason, that's what I like about it. But I mean, I like all sorts of religions. I don't particularly, I'm not biased about any of them. I think, you know, most religions do teach people to have or lead a good life, especially the Christian religion, which is the biggest religion now in the world, isn't it? The Christian religion. So I just think it's nice. And like I said, I've read the book more than a few times. If you looked at my Bible, it's fallen to bits. I need to get myself a new one. But I've got lots of notes in there of things that I've found interesting and just jotted notes down in there. Yeah. I could talk about a lot of things in the Bible, which I find really interesting. It's how are people finding the cost of living crisis at the moment? Is there anyone really struggling, you know, or have they noticed a big difference in how much things cost now? Just out of curiosity. What I find alarming, that's why I did those videos today, is that this is a global crisis, you know, and in each country where this cost of living crisis is taking place, it's the same thing throughout all these countries. You could type in the cost of living crisis, have a look at what's going on in Australia. You know, everyone is complaining about the same thing. And when I asked the artificial intelligence about it, point for point, you know, it was talking about what's already going on in our world with regards to the financial systems, banks collapsing, you know, and And I said if we wanted to gauge what what we could expect here in the West, then all we would need to do is have a look at what's going on in countries like China and India. And sure enough, banks are being closed in China. Withdrawals are being forbidden. People can't get hold of their own money. And, it's a communist country, but we are going to start to see a lot more protests. And I believe even worse, riots even in that country. But this is what's coming to our countries as well, The only reason why they're happening in their countries first is because of the size of the population. It's going to feel the effects of, technology replacing jobs and jobs being lost as a result much faster than what countries like ours here in the West. We've got 70 million, is it? Or just coming up on 70 million here in the UK. America, just over 320 or 330 million, but nowhere near as what their many, China's got. Yeah, food security is massive. And yeah, it's a good idea to grow your own, but I think we're too close now to the actual secondary effects of the capital system collapsing. Jay, I'm really sorry to hear that. I really am, mate. Have you got any support in place? You got care workers or anything that can help? Mate, it's, you know what? The only thing I can offer you is a prayer, mate. I see it too much. And, I did talk about this a few weeks ago. Sakir Starmer is an arsehole. He has gone after, first of all, he's taking now the pips off of the disabled people in this country. He took the winter allowance off the pensioners in this country. It seems he goes after the weakest of the weakest first, because the others are fit enough to argue back against him. But things are going to change. And I'll tell you why that is. I'll be careful the way I explain it. After what we saw with the spider's web operation in Russia, what Ukraine carried out, we're going to start seeing these sort of things in all our countries. You realise that, don't you? These drones can be brought for pennies on the book, and anyone can create, one of these vehicles that can do devastating damage. And if we went back 20 years ago and you wanted to have someone assassinated, you would have to be a very talented sniper, and probably then you wouldn't be, the chances of you hitting your target over a distance longer than a mile would be very, very slim. But now you can be literally 1,000 miles away from someone flying a drone, and your target's anywhere in the world or anywhere 1,000 miles away, and you can put that vehicle down on their head. We're going to start to see a lot of terrorist events coming soon, and that's just using explosives. What about when they start loading them up with, chemical weapons? Yeah, the people don't understand how things have changed with the, what started out as toys, really. These drones did. Now they've become weapons, and we're going to start seeing a lot more of this. Yeah. I hear a lot of people talk about that, Jay, that we are becoming a society that are being used like batteries. And when we're flat, when we're elderly, you just get chucked in the bin, discarded. And I think it's sad that, we're not sticking together as much as what we should do in society. I was talking to my sister earlier on, and we was discussing the farmers. More people should have come out in this country in support for the farmers. We should have stood by them, because it's like a lot of them was driving around with the signs on the tractor, no farms, no food. They are the reason why we've got plenty of food in the shops most of the times. If they're getting hit harder with inheritance tax, their farms are going to end up inevitably being smaller generations down the road. And, it's going to hit us in our pockets even more, because if they're being taxed more, then we're paying more for their produce. That's just farmers. I mean, more people should have come out in Canada in support of the truckers, in my view. But we haven't got there yet. I think we will at some point in the future. We're going to be sticking with each other a lot more, because, we have a common enemy now. And they call themselves public servants, but they never serve any other than themselves, unfortunately. They have literally killed science off, literally. And, the damage that they've caused, these universities that are no longer getting their supplements off the government, well, that's research that's not being done. The only reason why we've got technology that we have is because scientists was given a grant years and years ago and developed it. That's how we ended up with the TV. That's how we ended up with mobile phones. That's how we ended up with, the chips that we've got, and the things that run AI. It's all, and how we ended up with the internet. Yeah, this is the problem. This is really getting out of hand. You hear all these politicians talking about democracy, and at the heart of any democracy should be the freedom of speech, and that's what's being silenced. I've talked about this a few times in the videos on YouTube. We are being subject to very similar behaviour to what was experienced during the Second World War in the 1930s with the Nazis. Only they were burning paper literature. Today they're destroying digital information. By restricting views. I mean, I've had people say to me they got unsubscribed from my channel, or they haven't been given a notification of a new video that's been done. Who's responsible for this special treatment? It's YouTube. So, guys, I'm just going to switch the kettle on. Why don't you make yourself a cup of tea? If you're happy for to stick around a little bit longer, we can talk about whatever you want, or more along the lines of what we've been chatting about. It's up to you. But I'm going to just flip the kettle on. I'll come back and then I'll make a quick comeback. There we go. We're back. I'm actually glad I've done this live chat. It's something I should have done a long time ago, because I know a lot of people say do it live, and we can ask you some questions and topics that you've been talking about over the years. So maybe we'll do it maybe once a week or something. I don't know. We'll see. We'll just see. Maybe the next time I do it, I'll announce it so that people in other countries, we can all get together. Margaret, do you believe we have a day after tomorrow scenario in the next few years? I'm trying to think. That was the film when it starts off with everybody's pacemakers failing due to a magnetic pulse, doesn't it, or something? We could have something similar. Scientists have found the connection there between a weakening magnetosphere, or actually the connection between cosmic radiation and cardiac arrhythmia failure. The regular heartbeat can be affected by cosmic ray strikes. We know that cosmic ray strikes can smash into your DNA within your cells, and a lot of people don't know what actually well, not a lot, but there are a few people that don't know what causes cancer. I'll tell you what it is, because we were, when I was at Reading University, we was actually bombarding radiation on corn seeds, and then we were growing them to see what mutations we could create in the corn seed. So any radiation has the ability to modify that DNA, or in that case, it was RNA. So you can modify it can be modified by cosmic rays. What I mean by that is you can break pieces of the DNA off so that when it creates the cell, it creates it with the laws not normally that are normally associated with the new cell, regenerating itself in the exact same copy. One that's had damaged DNA will actually produce it not to obey the normal rules. So you end up with, like, for every cell in your body, there is a potential cancer. So, just a cosmic ray strike, a single one, can sever that DNA. And if that's the case, then the cell's going to reproduce in an abnormal way. And if your body's doesn't detect it and destroy it straight away, then that can become a cancer. So cosmic rays can cause cancer. We don't know, like I said at the beginning, when we started doing live, we don't know the exact numbers of cancers that have been caused through cosmic rays, and the increase in cosmic rays that's led to, as a result of the reduction in the magnetosphere, because that's our protective shield. The magnetosphere is our protective shield. If that decays or depletes, we're getting more radiation inbound from not just our sun, but from all over the galaxy, all over the universe. Stars that have exploded millions of years ago, their light and their radiation from their explosions are still traveling towards us. And of course, one of the reasons why we use the muon detectors is because what we're detecting is muons, and muons are the product of smashed particles in the upper atmosphere when cosmic rays collide with oxygen atoms and other atoms in our atmosphere. The result of that is muons. So by studying muons, we will know at ground level if there's an increase in that type of radiation. So yeah, it's the other thing we monitor here is standard radiation, or you'd say standard, but like your gamma, your beta, and alpha radiation. We use a Geiger counter to do that, as well as using the muon detectors in Canada, because we've only got one in Canada. We did send one to Australia. We had At one point, magnetometers on the east and west coast, one in Perth, one on the west coast as well. And we sent a muon detector, but for some reason never got any data off the muon detector, which is a shame. I had thought about manufacturing a few more magnetometers and muon detectors, but it's the cost of them, you know. The silicon photomultiplier, as far as I'm aware, is still the latest one and the biggest one you can purchase, and that is only 5mm by 5mm big. But you know, that cost me the last time I brought one of those £118 or thereabouts sterling, and that's just for that silicon photomultiplier. Then you have to buy the singulate block, which is like a tuned crystal to a certain frequency. So as the muon goes through the singulate, it actually glows as it goes through there. So the silicon photomultiplier is what picks up the light. It triggers in the electronics like a hold and then counts it as one. So, you know, I mean, it was built by MIT, someone at MIT, and they made it free to anyone that wanted to produce it. So I got hold of, Alex, can't remember his surname now, but he's on YouTube. He's done like debugging videos and how to build the muon detectors. But we had the PCB boards made. I had about 50 of them, I think, made. Then there was a list, literally, of about another 60, 70 components that you had to purchase individually, all at various prices. And of course, they're all surface mount as well. You know, components, all the components were surface mount, so very, very tiny. I don't know, I could show you one if you wanted to have a look at it. It's up to you guys. Just what's actually on the circuit board. I've got one half built or near enough built. But yeah, it's and then there's the time in building it. You know, you do get, the more you build of these things, the better you get at it. But yeah, perhaps we should, you know, if we can raise some more money at some point, we should be building a few more and getting them back out there. Because at one point we had them in Arizona, Kentucky, on the east and south coast, west coast of Australia, one in China. There was a lady who was a female pilot. She used to supply us with the data off the magnetometer, and she also had property in another part of the world, and she was going to take it there for us. I think it, off the top of my head, it might be Bali. I'm not sure. But she ended up moving from Hong Kong, her and her husband, back to Australia, and we lost touch. She said she was going to try and get someone to manage the data off the magnetometer for us, so that we would still get the data, but we never did. The other thing is we never get these magnetometers that we build back after somebody decides that they don't no longer want to do it, which is a shame, because, you know, once you send it out there, I don't charge people. I've never charged anyone for one of the magnetometers or the muon detector. You know, it was money that we raised off the channel, and we brought the components, built them, and sent them off. But you know what's frustrating is now, more than any time since we've been talking about this subject, now more than ever, we should have had more equipment out there, and we should be collecting data from more points around the other projects that have started off like ours. Like there was one you can log on to on the internet. It detects lightning strikes and thunderstorms, but the amount of sensors they've got all around the world is amazing. They've managed to get people to do more, you know, all in these locations around the world. There's literally hundreds of them, but there are a lot of projects that have been successful like that. You know, that started off at grassroots like ours did, that really accelerated. It's the magnetic North Pole. The problem is with the magnetic North Pole and the pole migration is that it's not widely known. You know, you guys have been following me for probably years now, but it's not widely known by the majority of people. A lot of people, I'm talking about 90, probably 95% of the population of this Earth, aren't even aware that our Earth's going through a magnetic pole reversal. And let's face it, for a lot of people, it's not a very interesting topic either. And it's just a very, very small science topic, in comparison to a lot of other exciting things like, most people have heard of the LHC, the Large Hadron Collider, the 25-mile superconductor. A lot of people have heard about that because of the news coverage. But how often do you switch on the media, news, mainstream media, and hear anything to do with the magnetic North Pole? You just don't. Yeah, Jay's talking about the UK being a corporation. Well, I know a lot of people know about it, and a lot of people don't know about it. We've actually got cities in this country. It's like London City is actually in London City, or the City of London is actually in London City. But then you've got this. This isn't that uncommon because in Rome you've got the Vatican City inside, of a capital already, and I'm pretty sure there's one in Washington DC. Is there? There's another one there, yeah. I've looked into all these conspiracies. There's a couple of members of family that are really intrigued by the magnetic pole reversal and all the information. They think it's pretty cool what I've managed to do over the years with the equipment, building it and tracking it. Anthony, we were talking about the UV rays. I was pondering, and I've pondered a few times now on how we can track the luminosity using solar panels, but it's very difficult because the best way to do it would be satellite, because there's no clouds that would interfere with the luminosity of the sun. But then the other thing that would affect it, even if you had a satellite, would be solar flares would increase the luminosity. So it's a difficult one. I have thought of different ways. I could probably build something that would. I think it would have to be along the lines, because if you plug a small solar panel into your multimeter and then you change the direction so that less light hits it, the voltage goes down. But if we just, I did come up with something using Arduinos where we could use it as a track. Where it would track the sun as it went across the sky by, when it started to get less in one part of the solar panel, or we'd have an array of solar panels, made out of loads of little ones. When it started to get less on there, then it would adjust to the more brighter part, so the majority of the panels was in the direct light. But then you've got the cloud coverage. Makes it really difficult. And this is one of the things that, I don't like about the way they measure temperature. It's because where they place the actual temperature sensors, I've seen some ridiculous places, like next to an air conditioning unit on the outside of a building, you've got a temperature reader, and then they say you can see how. Tony Heller does a brilliant job of all this nonsense science that they do. I know they calculate, whether we've got global warming or not. Another thing that never gets taken into consideration, and I know of a few scientists now that are leaving the field of science. They've just had enough, and largely over global warming and CO2 being blamed for everything. It's where they're collecting the data and how they're collecting it. it can be manipulated in, if you start putting on a large tarmac area temperature sensors, well, of course the temperature is going to be hotter than if it was in a field somewhere. And of course the temperature is going to be warmer if it's on the outside of a building next to air conditioning pumps and things like that. You're going to get bad data to start with. And, there was the other thing as well. They drawed a conclusion that there was not going to have the argument about whether global warming was real or not, because they've got 1,000 scientists that had all signed something to say that it was real, according to all the experiments and research that they'd done. But when you look through the names, and I'm not kidding you guys, when you look through the names of these scientists, one of them is called Mickey Mouse. But I know another scientist that was looking into ocean, the ocean levels increasing, and he said where there was being measured from by some of these scientists was at the wrong place, because the only place that there should have been measured ocean level was at the equatorial region, where the super bulge is, because of the gravity. You get a little bulge around the equatorial region, and they was measuring it northern hemisphere over the southern hemisphere. Has any of these scientists actually looked into whether the tectonic plates are on subduction zones, which means that the one plate is going under the other, and they say that these islands are going underwater because the sea levels are rising. But how do they know it's not on a subduction plate and it's going under and it's taking that little island under the water? So some may say the water's rising, but actually it's the island is going under the subduction zone, because we've got subduction zones, we've got convergent zones. These are different regions where plates behave differently. when they converge together, they buckle up. Some go under each other. Do they even look into that aspect? I bet you they don't. For all we know, that these islands that they say are sinking could be on subduction plates, on plate tectonics. That could be a perfect reason why the water is rising. It's because the actual island's sinking, because the plate it's on is on a subduction zone. It's being dragged under another plate. They don't even mention that, do they? Thanks, Carol. I really appreciate that, and I've tried to do my best as well with collecting the data for you guys. I think it's amazing that even at this point in time that we've got the website archive, especially, not just the data on the magnetometers that we've got on the TriMag system, but also, the other bits of data that we've got, like CO2. We know, because I've got the CO2 detector, I get that out, I get the oxygen sensor out, all sorts of stuff I get out when I do the Earth Alpha at a glance. And I also go onto other websites that, okay, I have to trust, like where I get the volcanic data from, I have to trust that they're being honest in relaying that. But I do trust them where we get the data from that. It's like the earthquakes, where I get the data from is not USGS, but I can verify the data that we get on the website with USGS, and if they're both saying the same, then the accuracy is probably more likely right than less likely to be right. But I've tried to make it easy for you guys as well with the data that we collect on all these other anomalies, so that you've got an archive. Basically, when people start talking about there's more volcanoes erupting, well, you can go and check. You've got 6 years of database there, archived information on volcanoes. Nearly every month I've took the readings and put it there. Same with the CO2. If they try to be sneaky, because what these government agencies are doing in a lot of cases now, I've noticed, is taking advantage of people's lack of knowledge in these subjects, because not everyone's clued up with, I've even seen people butcher doing background radiation readings. They get a fish and they put the Geiger counter right by the fish, and because it's reading high, they say, look at this reading. They didn't do a background radiation check first, which you take before you even introduce a subject into a Geiger counter. You've got to do a background reading. With a background reading, we've got an archive of 6 years. I can tell you off the top of my head. If I got the radiation detector out now, we would be at 0.017 or 16 or 18 microsieverts. The only time that I'd seen a higher reading was after a CT scan, a PET CT scan that I had at hospital, where they inject a little bit of radiation into you, and I've seen it go up to about 60,000 microsieverts, and then it decayed after within 24 hours. It was almost back down to a normal background reading. But that's the only time, and it proved that the Geiger counter worked as well, which was good. But I couldn't wait to get back home after that CT scan, to see whether whether I was radioactive, because they say don't go by for 24 hours after having one of those scans. Don't go by any pregnant women. So it must be for a reason. But yeah, it's we're really lucky to have the Trimag system as well. Really, really lucky. That didn't come easy for me or you guys. That literally took 2 years to write the program for that, because when I started, I didn't know how to program. I had a good idea. I've got a really good idea now about building electronics. I've got loads of projects on the go now. Someone gave me an old 3D printer, and of course the first thing I done was rape it for the stepper motors and the power supply inside it, because we've got some projects that are on the back burner, have been on there quite a while. Remember, I was going to build, and I'd got round to building out of Peltier elements. We was going to build a cosmic ray viewer on a black background. You bring the temperature down to about minus 37 degrees Celsius, and then you introduce alcohol vapor in there, and then you can see literally cosmic particles, alpha, beta, and gamma, and which they are by the pattern that they make. If you're able to capture it, which particles they are, because they make a specific pattern. And I think we've got it down to about 28 degrees. But that project went on the back burner for some reason. It's still there now. We built the water blocks to draw the temperature out of the Peltier elements, and we had the Peltier elements, if you remember, if you saw it, running at different voltages, so we could bring the temperature down as much as we could. Hi Nemesis, how you doing, Jay? Oh, Ben Davison. Okay. Me and Ben Davison go back a long time, before he was anything what he is now. I think he had, I know he had less than 100,000 subscribers, probably about 60,000. And there was a guy called, what was his name on YouTube? Astrotometry. And he was looking at similar things to what Ben Davison talks about. And they were both arguing in the comment section on my old channel that I had, which was just Mavstar. And they were both trying to put their argument against me. And one was accusing the other of taking drugs or whatever. And I just said, look, I didn't want to get involved in the argument, but more than that, I didn't want them arguing in my channel like there was. And we ended up falling out, me and Ben Davison. But he's a bit of a pork pie. He has told some lies. He said that I handed over my research for him to review. Think about this. He's not a scientist. He's trained in law. Why would I, as a scientist, hand over work to him to review for me? Just wouldn't make any sense. I've kept what he said about me. I've got a file with everything that he's talked about, and I've showed people before, but I just try not to get involved in it no more. Just don't want to know. It's like, he's not the only one that took it upon himself to fall out with me and, say what he does about me. But at the end of the day, I'm not interested. Another one is David Morella. He fell out with me because I wouldn't talk to him. after a while. But I'm not going to go into it. It's just no point. It's just no point. Nothing comes of arguing pettily over things. They've said a lot of things. I've proved everything I need to. I've showed people all the equipment we've got here at the observatory. I've showed people my academic transcript, and all you get is once you show them one thing, then they go on to move on to the next, and I could keep doing this for the rest of my days. It just isn't worth it. What I have realised is that you do get members of the public that you just can't satisfy, and you get good members of the public which understand and support. But that's it. I'm still reading the other half of your question there. I think you have to, judge people yourself. You can work it out. Those that are trying to make money, and those that, there's a lot of things. I do find psychology interesting. Have you noticed when people are being interviewed by a reporter on TV, and they're on video? Have you noticed what's in the background? All these books. Why is everyone being interviewed with a little library behind them? What are they trying to do? They're trying to sell that they're smarter than, well read and well versed in this book and that book. They're literally, that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to come over smarter than what they are. But you see this pattern in other things that I've noticed on YouTube. Have you noticed that when people put a video up now, there's yellow or white writing in big bold letters all over the video avatar? So the people do follow patterns. It's strange. And that one with the bookcases, I noticed that in the lockdown when they was interviewing anyone. It was like everyone, hold on a minute, why has everyone got a bookcase behind them? What's going on there? And you still see it today with people. It's like, oh, I've got to have a bookcase behind me. It makes me look more intelligible. I'm not bothered if they appreciate me. Clearly, it's like I've said before. Are you going to ask a lawyer about a medical condition? You're not, because his profession is law. If you've got a matter of law, you're going to speak to a lawyer. You're not going to talk to your doctor. So, I think there is a bit of jealousy, to be honest. There is, and they could never, let me see them build one thing, and to record the scientific information. Let me see it. I've not seen it up to date. I've seen a lot of things. There was a mobile observatory at one point, but I'm still wondering what it was actually observing. I don't know. What I do know is that someone spent a lot of time driving around all the states in America with his girlfriend. So, whereas me, on the other hand, I've talked the talk, and hopefully I've showed people I walk the walk. I've built these electronic components. We've built a lot of stuff. After building the Trimax system, it was easy to build the next electronic component, which was the magnetometers. And then it was even easier to build the muon detectors. Once I got an understanding of writing C++, I could use it then to write other bits and bobs. Like at the moment now, I'm playing with stepper motors. I've built a laser communication device. People have said, "Oh, we haven't seen it." I did put it on a video. I'll get one of the nights. We'll do a live thing here, and I'll have all the stuff here, and we can show you all the things that I've built out of electronics. And I'll show you the laser thing. That's pretty cool. That is. Technology is being used by NASA now to communicate with the International Space Station using lasers, and basically you just encode the beam of light. Or what we do is we modulate the beam of light, and you can use the laser to encode audio, video, in the beam. And then you can use a solar panel. If you put the beam at the solar panel, connect the solar panel up to an amplifier and then a speaker, guess what? You've got a receiver as well. So transmission and receiving you can do with that. And, you know, I did loan it out to someone that was going to use it for their company, but it really didn't. It didn't really take off for them. And that was sending messages like capsules out into space with people's videos and stuff. We did send a few out, but it's one of them things, isn't it? If you know about photons, you know that a laser is firing photons in the similar method as what's coming off the sun in their photos. Same thing, but you can modulate laser light. We used induction method. That's how we got the laser to modulate through using induction. So separate coils, basically, in the launch box, which connects to the laser, which basically just encodes any audio or video into the beam, and then you send the beam up into space on a clear night. And, you know, it will travel until it comes into contact with something. So it could travel forever. It could surpass Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 in a matter of weeks, you know, and they've been moving since the 80s out of our, I think they have now just passed out of our solar system, haven't they, Voyager 1 and Voyager 2, which was those satellites with the gold records on the side with the human form. I think that Leonardo da Vinci done, was it? I'm not sure, but yeah. So I'm just reading your things. Yeah, the problem is with this technology. Someone's talking about AI there. It's leading quite obviously to the loss of jobs. You know, that's the big problem. And, you know, we depend on jobs to, you know, trade our labour for money. And, you know, the jobs are going left, right and centre now. Literally left, right and centre. You know, I was watching a video today on YouTube with UPS laying off a load of its workers because they're now, this guy's job was a sorter at UPS. Now they've got a machine to do it. You know, it's going to, not only him, but I think quite a few of the sorters in that, you know, that unit are going to be laid off. It's like, you know, with the reduction in freight that's going via ships to the States at the moment, leaving the ports 40% low on all their, you know, cargo. You know, more people are losing their jobs. It's terrible. You know, the government, you're telling me the governments didn't know that this was going to happen when we started using technology. Wait until this Tesla robot, the Generation 3, comes out. We're done. We are literally screwed, guys. You know, that and artificial intelligence is already taking people's jobs left, right and centre. What are we going to do to participate in this system? And, you know, in my view now, after, you know, I discussed it in the video tonight, that capital system's broke. The problem is nothing's replaced it yet. Or even so, what will replace the capital system? But I'm guaranteeing there's going to be a lot of trouble before people are going to revolt. People aren't going to put up with this any longer. You know, we're not part of this system for the rich. You know, we're in it for ourselves, aren't we? The reason why we work and exchange our labour is so that we can pay for the bills and have a little bit of enjoyment at the end of the month. But if you have a look around on the internet and a lot on TikTok, you know, people can't afford even the month's bills, let alone have enjoyment, and they're getting angry over it, which rightfully so. You know, what's the point in working if you've got nothing at the end of it? You know, I've spoken about this before. You look at the terminology of a slave. They get a roof over their head to get fed. You know, some people are working and they can't either have heating and food at the same time. They've got to have one or the other. And of course, what do they choose? They choose food. So, if you're an elderly person and you yourself, you need food to survive, and you're probably thinking, I'll put a few extra jumpers on, but you suffer with angina. You're done. It's just wrong. It's wrong that they obviously know what's going on. They knew that technology was going to eventually, step on the workforce's toes. People were going to start losing jobs as a result of it. You only got to look at car manufacturing plants now. How many robots are in there? Mainly, there's one factory, I think it's in China, which is completely automotive, which means from start to finish that the trucks roll off there and built completely by robots. I think the only job that the human being does is the PDI at the end, the last inspection, the test run. It's not good. Something needs to be, first of all, I think the public need to be reassured that the government around the world are aware of what's going on. They know that they've got to address the problem. And what we would like to know is what exactly, how are they addressing it, and what are we going to do to replace the capital system? Because it's finished. Hyperinflation has destroyed capital system. That's why people's wages doesn't cover the bills anymore. So we have reached a point where something's, and that's what the government need to do, just to put us, at a little bit of ease of mind. Tell us what's going on. Don't treat us like, stupid people. We're old enough and intelligent enough to be told the truth. They seem to think that we're not. It's frustrating. No, you're welcome, Buster. We'll do it again another time. It's like I say, I've never done live stream before, but we're here. We've got 33 people still listening. Just it's an opportunity for you to ask questions, isn't it? Yeah, Dave. You do feel like slaves. Literally, when what we get out of working all month is just a roof over our heads, and you pay the bills. That's where's the enjoyment? We're here to experience things out, and what experiences are we getting if the only thing we can afford to do is pay for the roof over your head? It's sad. Like I say, the government need to treat us as an adult, and tell us that they're aware of the problem, and tell us what they're doing to address it. How do you know I live by you, Dave? Well, I live just on the outskirts of, I actually do have a CV postcode, so I live on the outskirts of Coventry, but in a little village. About 12 minutes drive from Birmingham International Airport will give you an idea. Oh, okay. I mentioned it, did I? Oh, Tar Hill. Yeah, I know where that is. You're not far from here at all. I know Tar Hill. Well, I don't mind. Someone broadcast exactly where I live, didn't they? I live in a little village called Forlongley. But, that's common knowledge, thanks to someone, Yeah, I know Berkswell. Yeah. Jack, you say that the sun's causing all these quakes. Where's the evidence coming from for that? Somebody else talking about this, but what are they basing their evidence on? They're saying that that there's a correlation between the sun's activity and earthquakes, but what is it? And how accurate is it? Is it exactly every time the sun behaves in a specific way that we get the earthquakes? Yeah. Yeah, not far from Old Arley. Yeah. I don't know if you know Gunhill at all. It's not far from there. New Arley, Old Arley. You've got Cawley, not far away as well. You probably know where that is, by the M6, Cawley services. I like it. I like living here. It's a very quiet place. I've been here now. I if you know the area, you probably know where. I used to live in Bentley Common, which was nice, just up the road from Baddesley Ensor, the coal colliery. It's funny that we moved now, and there was another coal colliery here, Dordon coal colliery, which is closed. Both of them have closed now. So, but yeah, I lived in Bentley Common for about 7 years, and I've been here 9 years now. But I like living here. It's quiet. Is Stephen Burns the one that likes to put a little bit of pseudoscience in with his research? Talking about astrology and stuff like that. Yeah, I thought so. Yeah, I have come across his channel. It's not all science, though, is it, that he talks about? As I could mention names, I just don't want to, because then, it makes you feel. I mean, I have been wound up a few times by what people have said about me, but it's just better to just say nothing. I could name drop lots of people, and some of the things they talk about is not scientific at all. So there's no point. You guys know. Obviously, you must know when you come across someone genuine, as opposed to when you come across someone ungenuinely that is just probably out there for money. We never got lucky, really. I don't know what it is with YouTube. What it is, I really don't know. They demonetized us for one thing. They said we could never get it back again. But that used to help out a little bit, that did. We'd get nearly £500 a month off the advert revenue, and then they stopped it. And it's like, did you notice we never got to 60,000 subscribers? And now it's slowly in decline. What is it about the topics that we talk about that YouTube finds so offensive? I don't know. But some people have said perhaps it's when you're on the over the target, because that's the way they respond. Yeah. Is there anything else anyone wants to talk about? Anything? See you guys. Yeah, you want to go for a beer? Yeah, I mean, we could probably bump into each other for a coffee one of the days if you fancy that. Yeah, if you want to talk about this, maybe we could get a few people together. We could all meet up, have a coffee somewhere, talk about it. I could bring some of the other stuff as well if you're interested in some of the other research that I've done over the course of about 25 years. I know that people, when they see it, some of the work that I've done on it, they let's just put it this way: there's enough there to make anyone curious about any of the subjects that I talk about. I think the next time we do a live, I'll announce it, a couple of days before, and perhaps we'll get a few more people in here, and I'll also get some of the things that we've talked about tonight out, so I can show you what we're talking about, and probably do a couple of hours live, showing people all these different things, because I know that there's my noticed reaction is when I do start talking about that and I start showing them, they're not bored, they're switched on, and they're finding it all fascinating. So we could do that one of the nights. And I could use probably my other laptop as well, because the camera on this one's not that good. So yeah, I find it, AP, the exact same thing. You can never know enough. The more information I get, the more I thrive on it. I like the fact that over the years I have learned how to program stuff. Even though it's simple breakout boards like Arduinos. It's just having the ability to think of something that you want to build, and then having the ability to build it. So I'm messing about with stepper motors at the moment, just getting them to do very basic things. Like, you can get them to do 2 complete rotations, stop, and then go back and do 2 rotations. The thing is, I haven't come up with a project to use them for. I was thinking, I've got, I brought one of these little kits. I think it originated on a Kickstarter, and it was recognition. I'm trying to think of it. What was it called? Anyhow, it recognises vectors. Our facial recognition puts loads of lines over your face. It recognises that, and it runs on little servos. But I was going to have the servos take the servos off, and then I was going to put stepper motors on there, 2 stepper motors, so one with a vertical and one with a horizontal, and then I was going to have it mounted on the front of the property, so that when anyone walked past, it spun round and watched them walk past. And I was going to put a couple of little red LEDs on there that got brighter and brighter. Probably frighten the neighbours off, but it would track them as they come past, because that's what this thing does. It's ever so good. You drop like a little ping pong ball, and it bounces on the table, the way they do. And this camera will bounce up and down and track it left and right as well. Brilliant. But you can teach it to track specific colours like red. So anyone wearing red that walked past the house, it'd follow them, or yellow. You could choose or select a colour for it to track. It was quite good. But I was going to use that also for something else I saw on YouTube. Someone had put like they fitted a paintball gun on some stepper motors, and they put the recognition software in with it. And there was a guy that was hiding behind something, and then he poked his head round with a visor on, and the paintball gun would start shooting at him. So he built like, what do they call them? There's a name for these autonomous guns. I can't think of the name of it. But, I thought that was an interesting project that they'd done there. But there's quite a few now on there. There's lots of good projects on YouTube, for electronics and stuff. Are you off, Jim? If you are, good night. Have a good evening. So what we're going to talk about next, we've done the electronics, talked a little bit about the magnetic pole reversal. We talked about some ancient civilizations and the artifacts that they've left us behind. Like I was saying, I do feel sorry for how science is going. I really do. I've heard Nobel Peace Prize winners that was just happy with the way things were going. This one particular guy shared 50-50 with another guy on some of the research that they did, but he became a Nobel Peace Prize winner. Half of the prize was his. And he's driving people's luggage to the airport now, as opposed to doing science. I think that's the tragedy of what's happening in this particular field. You can imagine, and not just Nobel Peace Prize winners. Just people that have contributed really, big chunks to scientific communities that have not really had anything back from it. No reward at all. So what do you say that, Jay, that the moon phase is out of whack? What makes you believe that? What's your reasoning for that? I'll be honest with you, the moon is something. I know it's there because you can see it on the evening, but I haven't really paid much attention to the phases of the moon. The one thing I did notice that when I was in another country, the moon, because where it was in the world, the moon wasn't like we see it, like if you imagine the moon is probably 1/3 of the moon there, and it was upright. But where I was at another location of the Earth, it was on its side. I thought that's weird, because I'd never seen it like that. It was in Dubai. I looked at the sky in the Dubai, and the moon was like a boat in the sky, as opposed to being upright and round that way. So depending on where you are in the world, you get a different vision of the moon. Which the first time I saw that, I was pretty, taken by it. Didn't expect to see it. But if you think about it, it's absolutely the way it should be, isn't it? From different positions on the Earth. Yeah, I'm sorry about that, Jay. But I do try and. If I just talked about the pole shift all the time, it'd be like watching paint dry. And like I say, it's not the most exciting scientific anomaly that's taking place for a lot of people. And what I try and do is talk about a few other things, like we talk about crop circles sometimes, talk about the universal equation, talk about the Bible sometimes. It's just to break it up, the monotony of just talking about one specific. That's why on the website I incorporated a lot of other things and other anomalies that are happening, as opposed to just so that it could become also an information hub for other things as well that people were interested, like other anomalies like volcanic activity, solar activity. I've got to say though, some of the widgets on there aren't running at the moment, and they need updating. Like the Arctic ice levels, sometimes that's intermittent. Sometimes it gives you the Arctic ice content, and sometimes it don't. But I tried to cover as much as I could on there for people, to try not just to try, well, to make it like a one-stop place for Earth anomalies, that sort of thing, as well as information related to the magnetic pole, because it was set up for that, really. But I just wanted to make it a little bit. I did have quite a few people say, though, that it was good that they'd come across the website, because they liked all the other information that they could look at as well. So try to make it just a bit more interesting. What I'd like to do, if you're up for it, guys, the next time we do a live stream, I'll bring some of that literature over, some of on the work that I've done on the background here and there. When I get time, I do look into a lot of things, but I've got a lot of images that you can have a look at, topics that we can talk about, like the first civilizations, some of the things that they thought about, the Anunnaki, the planet Nibiru. That was all in their tablets. We could talk about that, and I could show you some of the other things that I've built. I'll probably show you that laser communications. We can set that up. You can have a look at that. I might set it up as an experiment so that you can see that, when we play music through the laser, we'll have over there a little receiver set up, so that, when I block the laser beam, you can see that the music stops. And when I uncover it, you can see that the beam hits the solar panel that runs through the amplifier, and then the speaker, you can hear it. You'll get an idea as how that works. But it's on the principles of fiber optics only. The problem is with laser is with fiber optics, you can get it then round corners. With a laser, it's directional, so you have to be on target with it. So if you wanted to transmit from here to Mars, you'd have to have it accurately hit the receiver. Otherwise, you wouldn't get the transmission. But the nice thing about the laser is that it could be set up for transmission between Earth and Mars. You'd have a satellite out in space. You'd send your information up to the satellite. The satellite would send it then to Mars. And the nice thing about that is it's a transmission at the speed of light. You're actually using beams of light to transmit the audio data or video at that speed. And it could easily go beyond our solar system. And like I say, NASA are using the same system at the moment, now to communicate with the ISS. I think it's because they can send larger packets of data faster through a laser than they could other means, of perhaps, I don't know, using other means of transmitting. So yeah, we can have a look at some of that stuff. I can show you some of the electronic components that we built. I can show you some of the equipment that we record the data on here for you guys. If you're interested in that, not a problem. I've got my driver training this week. I don't know whether you saw the videos where I've had to find something else to earn a living with. So I about 6 months ago, I started looking into driving HGVs, because most of my friends are truck drivers anyhow, and a few family members. And they've been telling me to do it years and years ago. So I finally got around to it, and I've done the theory, done the medical. I've got the HGV professional qualification done now. So this Tuesday, I start the actual driver training for a couple of weeks, and then hopefully on the 19th is my test day I'll pass, and someone's offered a job already for me to do. So, I'm actually looking forward to it, to be honest, doing something different. And it's a little bit scary because, if you stand up close to these things, if you've never driven before and you're actually standing by them, looking at the actual length of them, I know a lot of the people that I know that drive them said, look, they're big to start with, but these vehicles get smaller the more you drive them. So don't worry about it. But it is a little bit. I'm going to be in. I've driven large box wagons before, but not over 7.5 ton. So to get into something now that's got the capacity to weigh 44 tons, it's quite frightening. And of course, doing the driver qualification, we saw they showed us a lot of accidents with trucks. What I wanted to get into is, I do my normal driver training next week, start that. But I wanted to do the ADR, which is hazardous goods, and the one I wanted to do is the Class 3 hazardous goods, which is tanker driving. Because where I live, you probably know, we're not far from Kingsbury Refinery, so there's probably an opportunity to get in there. But there's you've got to get the ADR. So that's the next course I'm going to go on, to get the hazardous goods and then do the tanker training as well. But yeah, looking forward to that. So I think, guys, we're going to round it off here, and I'll tell you what I'll do. We'll get a day in the new week on one of the evenings, and we'll get some stuff together. If there's something you want me to talk about, and you think about it from there till, let's say, maybe Monday night or Tuesday night, we'll do another live broadcast, and we'll have some stuff for you guys to have a look at as well. We'll sort out a load of stuff that we can talk about and I can show you. So I'm going to leave you to it, guys. I'm going to close it off now, and it's been really nice to answer a few questions for once, and thanks for joining me. So have a good evening. As always, bye for now.